Gear up, Scooter fam. Let's talk. How's it going, guys? All right, so before we really jump in to the video, got a few things to talk about today. First, I wanted to update you guys that Wired Rides is back in stock with a lot of the Namis. They have the Bernie 2, regular Bernie 2 base model, and the both of the Klimas, the Klima that I have, and then the Klima Max, the regular Klima and Klima Max, 25 amp hour and 30 amp hour Klima versions, and you know they're a tad on the pricey side compared to what Fluid Free Rides was when they were carrying their Namis, although they only have the Bernie Max at the moment, and Wired Rides is fairly competitive with the price that they're offering there, maybe a tad bit better. But that being said, they are the only ones that I'm aware of in the United States that's offering that you can get the Nami scooters. There may be some offhand ones that I'm just not familiar with, but I'm just speaking of the ones that I'm familiar with. Wired Rides is the only one I know of in the U.S. So now there's some places you can get them. I've seen in Canada, where you can get them shipped over and so forth, and fairly competitive pricing. But you know, that's a little different, and sort of, you know, and there, and I believe you have to pay duties. You have to pay taxes, international duties, shipping it across the border. So there is that. I've seen someone say it's 120 bucks maybe for a Klima. Was the additional import tax that they were charged, and so something to consider. I think I'm happy they actually have them all in stock. That's for sure. But yeah, so just be just be aware of that. I think they're good deals. You might be able to find a code somewhere that'll help you get a little bit of off that if you are interested in the Klima, like I said, especially the Klima, because they're the only ones that have it. The Bernie base, the Bernie 2 base model also is the only where that I know of that you can get it from. And so that's just wanted to update you guys on that. Wired Rides is back in stock with the Namis. All right, so first order of business, I want to talk about upcoming podcasts. So I know I said we were going to be doing a podcast this weekend with The Average Guy 1983, Tiger Grimtack, Mo Cricket, and then possibly a surprise guest. And that looks to have dissipated and what have you. That's not going to happen this weekend. So, and we'll get into. I'm not going to get too heavy into the weeds, but point is, I've been trying to do a podcast. I've been trying to get podcasts going on my channel for a while now, to try to mix it up. You know, I went through all this content at first when I first started doing my channel. There was plenty of things that I hadn't talked about. There were plenty of scooters that I hadn't covered that I was interested in. And then, you know, I honestly just, you know, can't find any more really content. The weather got cold, so I couldn't go ride as much. So that stopped that kind of content for the most part. Still squeezed it in every once in a while when it got nice. And there's a lot more coming up once the weather's nicer. I plan to do a lot more going out and having fun on the scooters, the Apollo Go and the Klima, and sort of sharing my experiences with you guys as we go forward on those scooters, and sort of how they do, any kind of flats, any kind of issues that I have along the way. You guys will know right up front. So yeah, I've been wanting to do podcasts for a long time. I've reached out to several other influencers. I've reached out to owners of scooter companies and asked if they want to join the podcast. I've been pretty proactive about trying to get this going for a while, and then was able to get Tiger Grimtack. Was the first person that I reached out to put this podcast together, and he agreed. He was into the idea, and then he reached out to the Average Guy 1983 and asked him if he wanted to join the podcast, and he was interested in joining the podcast, and I was excited. I think that probably 3 people on a podcast minimum is necessary to be a decent podcast, just because it keeps the energy going a little bit. 2 people, it just, to me, is, it's more of an interview than a podcast, and it just doesn't have the same feel to it. So, at least 3 people, 3 to 4 people. I mean, a little bit more, it's not a big deal, but at least minimum 3. And just because, it keeps it, like I said, keeps it going, keeps it fresh, and conversation, it's enjoyable. So, in any case, I've like I said, I've reached out and then doing the podcast with the Average Guy 1983. He brought in Mo Cricket. That's been a great addition to our stuff. He's been wanting to come on regularly, and I welcome that. I think he adds a nice layer to the group. He has his own experiences. I appreciate hearing his perspective, and he has questions and is curious about stuff too. So he just really adds a special part to the group. So I really enjoy doing the podcast with them. I hope to do more with them in the future. No doubt about it. So we'll see how that goes. But for now, we're not going to be doing it this weekend for sure. And so I am doing a podcast this weekend though. And so that's what I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit. So, for whatever reason, there was something that was brought up in our last podcast. Maybe a misunderstanding, some confusion, misinterpretation, whatever it was, maybe caused a little bit of a ripple. And I think it was, like I said, pretty innocent misunderstanding. I don't think there's any ill intent anywhere along the way. But there's been some, a bit of, kind of back and forth a little bit about what was said in the podcast, and so forth. And I'm not going to get too in the weeds with that, like I said. But I will say once again, I think it was a little bit of a misunderstanding, misinterpretation, what have you. I don't think there's any ill will or intent on anyone's part. And so, anyway, that being said, this weekend I have a podcast planned with Tiger Grimtack and then Kizzy E-Wills. So, I don't think Kizzy's going to show up on camera. He's not likely to do that. So we'll see how that goes. Not a big deal, but he doesn't show his face on his own channel. So just a spoiler alert. I don't think he'll be showing his face on camera, but I'll be happy to get him in and have a chat with him. I invited him a while back to do a podcast, even before we started doing podcasts. And him and I have kind of been going a little bit back and forth since then to try to figure out, something to do. And I finally got a chance to get him on a podcast. I originally, was trying to get us all together, but originally we weren't together. But once we got together and we were kind of going back and forth, I was interested in possibly getting Kizzy on our podcast with Average Guy 1983. But that never came to to surface. And I mean, like I said, Kizzy's been super busy with some things going on in his life, and he's had a new baby and so forth. Congratulations, by the way, on that, Kizzy. And so I'm looking forward to the podcast, and I still hope that maybe we can all get on a podcast one day together if that happens. But I'm gonna try to continue doing podcasts, and I hope that I get to do podcasts with all these guys in the future again. I've had a great time, and I just wanted to express that. I have no ill will towards anyone. I want, I'm not a guy that likes to, get into the silliness of it all. And so I'm completely on board with, doing more podcasts with anyone that wants to do them. Once again, guys, reach out if you're interested in jumping on. I really like doing them. So as long as there's, you know, interested parties that want to do podcasts, I like to get at least 3 people. So if we can get at least 3 people on a podcast, I'm on board. And I'm pretty flexible with time. But once again, I mean, it does depend on 3 people. All 3 people have to be somewhat flexible. So, or at least come up with a time. So I believe this weekend we'll be doing a podcast, me, Tiger Grintack, and Kizzy E. Wills. And I'm super excited about it. And hopefully we can get back on with the Average Guy 1983 and Mo Cricket very soon. But I'll update you guys as we go. All right. Next order of business, just going to kind of talk about in general. Haven't got to do a lot more writing again. There'll be more updates with the Go, and like I said, even the Klima a little bit. Although I have more miles on the Klima now, so I know that scooter a little bit better than I do the Go. So I'll try to get more experience with the Go, probably in general, just to get a better feel for the scooter. But I can tell you so far, it's a great scooter. It's a super sturdy scooter. I like it a lot, like I said, compared to the Journey Max, which I think is, for the money, also a super sturdy scooter. Some differences. I think I talked a little bit about them before. The turn signals, the suspension is a million miles difference. The region versus the drum brakes, those types of things. I was trying to look, and something I was kind of talk about a little bit. So cruise control, I don't use it. And on Journey Max, you can't turn it off. I might have mentioned it, but you can't turn it off. There's no app, so you can't go into the app, and there's no series of buttons that can turn it off. I did see some things that said you could, but they've never worked on mine. So if they work on versions that I don't have. I've never gotten. So I've gotten 2 different ones, and neither of them could disengage cruise control. So that's that is what it is. But I don't use it, so I don't like it. I don't want it kicking on at all. If it's something like the Klima, where I can hit the minus button on the control pad and then hold down the accelerator at the same time to engage cruise control, that's fine because I can't accidentally do it. But when I'm just riding around and I accidentally hold the throttle at a certain level for 5-6 seconds or whatever it is, and it kicks on when I'm not, when I'm pulling up to an intersection or something, I'm not prepared for that. I don't like that. No one does. So I disable it. It's disabled on the Go. There's no way to disable it on the Journey Max, and then on the Klima, it's not necessary to disable it because you can't accidentally do it. So, which is fine. I don't mind having it. I don't know if there'll ever be a need for a reason. I've done it just to test it out, but I wouldn't normally use cruise control on a daily basis, and so I don't, certainly not. If me just by holding the throttle for a period of time turns it on, I just don't like that feature. There should at least a double button thing like the Klima. I mean, whether it's holding the mode button in that or whatever it is. I mean, there's a way to try to figure that out. But I don't like the holding down the throttle for a certain period of time. It's too easy to do it without thinking about it. Another one is push to start. So I've got some, when I first got my Journey Max, I I was thinking about that. And once again, you cannot. There's no way to go and turn this off. So push to start's always on, and it never bothered me at all, right, on the Journey Max, because it's a pretty light scooter, and you really don't have to do much more than just kind of step up on the scooter to be able to use the accelerator. You're not, you're not, you still have to step up on it before you push the accelerator. You can't push it as you're stepping up on it because it needs to be moving a little bit, but I mean, not a lot. Once again, it's just, I mean, you can lean forward and get your momentum to push the scooter and enough to start the accelerator. I've done it. So because I've gotten on and actually forgot to turn the power on. So I got on and tried to push off and get going. And I realized that I didn't turn the power on the scooter. So as I'm barely moving, I go ahead and power the scooter on without having to, stop and all that, and I'm trying to use my momentum to keep the scooter going to a decent speed until it fully turns on. I mean, it's not that long, but just trying to move my momentum forward so that the scooter, so I don't have to stop and start again, and I'm able to do that enough to get the throttle going on the Journey Max. So it's just, I mean, it's hardly push to start in my opinion. You just can't. But it's a nice safety feature because you can't whiskey throttle it if you're not standing on it. So if you're not moving, so if you're standing there working on the scooter, messing with the scooter, it's turned on and you accidentally hit the throttle, nothing's gonna happen. And so that's a nice thing, I think, personally. It's too easy if you're in a confined space to accidentally hit a throttle and have it just, take off on you, run up your wall. Who knows what kind of damage could be caused by such a simple thing. Injuries, damage, you have to paint your wall or replace some sheetrock or replace a television or whatever it is that gets, televisions these days look super cool, but they break at the slightest little bump. So yeah, I like to push the start. However, I got the Klima, and once again, wasn't really too concerned about the push to start. But when I got it, I took it out and had to push the start on, and that's a big scooter. All right, it weighs twice as much as my Journey Max or my Go, and it's a high step up compared. I mean, I'm certain there's higher ones such as the Wolf or the King GTs and so forth, the GTRs. Those are like stepping up on I don't know, but just really high up off the ground. So, that stepping up on the Klima and trying to get enough momentum to get the throttle to engage, and there's a slight dead zone in the throttle. It just, I was having to push it several times. I was having to push the Klima several times, 2 or 3 times before I could get enough speed going. It was just silly. I'll be honest, it was silly. So I turned it off. And so on the Klima, I don't have it. And once again, it's on the Klima, I don't find it to be as big of a deal. And that's another reason I kind of like the dead zone, because it's a layer of protection. If you accidentally bump it, it's not going anywhere. You actually have to get it past that dead zone, which almost has to be intentional for you to do it. So, it's difficult to whiskey throttle as well when completely stopped, because you almost have to be intentional on that type of throttle. I like it. I've never had the slightest issue with it. I found a really good way to have control of it. I can go very slow speeds with complete control, and I don't have that kind of control of either one of these other two scooters. Better control on the go than the Journey Max, but the Klima and that style of throttle and those controllers are just super smooth, and like I said, I can go incredibly slow through the tightest spaces without really being concerned at all for such a beefy scooter compared to the other two. At least it does a super good job of stuff like that. So anyway, the push to start is turned off on the Klima. However, the Apollo Go is very similar to the Journey Max in that regard as far as getting it going. So I leave the push to start on the Apollo Go, and with a standard thumb throttle on the Apollo Go. I think it's a good feature because you can't accidentally hit the throttle when completely stopped and get the scooter to take off. So that's, like I said, that's good. I'm super happy with that, and so yeah, I do use it. I like it as a feature, but on the bigger scooters, it's probably not realistic to want to do that. I mean, you might be able to turn it down to a really low level or something like that, but with something like the Klima and that throttle that it has, I find it to be easy to control. I still push off a little bit, obviously, when I get going, but I'm not depending on having to push off really difficult and I can fairly well just stand up on the Klima and same thing, kind of lean forward and get going pretty easily without push to start. The next thing I was going to talk about is like single dual motor mode. So I looked at the Apollo Go trying to see if I could find this. And I don't think I could find it, but on the Journey Max and my Klima, I can choose to have the front tire, the rear tire, or both tires pushing at the same time. So even without an app on the Journey Max, well, the Klima as well, but I can still control which wheel is activated. So once again, front wheel, rear wheel, both wheels. And I didn't, once again, I mean, I did not buy a dual motor scooter to ride around in single motor mode. I mean, I would have got a single motor scooter. And I think there's, some confusion. I'll say it like this because I've done some data studies on range and so forth, as some of you guys may know, and there's a video on it that I made talking about me predicting range based on battery size, and so what I'll tell you is that there is a tad bit of difference in range from a single motor scooter to a dual motor scooter. There is a tad bit of range that you get from going single motor versus dual motor. All other things equal. So of course you can't compare certain scooters with bigger batteries, but if you take the same scooter pretty much and you make it a single motor versus a dual motor, like I said, taking all the other things out of the equation, the single motor scooters do get a tad bit more range. And I know that because in my formula that I came up with, one of the things that does seem to matter a little bit is if it's single motor or dual motor. And if I choose single motor, the numbers pop up with a tad bit more range. That doesn't mean that you could take a dual motor scooter, turn off one of the motors and get better range. That I don't believe. And that's why I said it the way I said it. I think if you buy a single motor scooter, let's say the eMove Cruiser V2, I believe you will get better range than when you add that dual motor. And when you add that dual motor to that 52 volt system, you're going to lose range. Yep. And I haven't seen anyone actually do this yet. I've seen the dual motors out there. Average Guy 1983 has one, but taking the old single motor scooter and adding a second motor is going to bring down the range. And so, yep. My reason for saying that is a couple of reasons. So, you've got the same battery now pushing out more power through two motor switches makes the scooter a tad heavier. And so having dual motors and being able to push against that motor is different than just having a freewheel motor, a freewheel without a motor, and just being able to move along. That's different. So taking a dual motor scooter and deactivating one of the motors is not going to get you more range. You're probably going to get less range because now you have another motor that could be going that isn't. So I don't ever believe that you'll get more range by turning off a motor on a scooter that has dual motors. But I do believe if you buy a single motor scooter, which I don't necessarily recommend, that you can get better range than if you choose to buy a dual motor scooter, all other things equal. So that's my take on it, and I'm basing that on some statistical analysis that I did. And once again, there's a video on it. It's got a genie over a lamp or something like that, or a crystal ball, I think. I don't know why I came up with that idea. Anyway, and it was trying to predict range, and it's fairly accurate. It's fairly accurate as I prove in the video. But in any case, yeah. So I believe that there's some confusion saying, well, if you use one motor, it doesn't necessarily get more range than if you get two. And that's true if it's a dual motor scooter. I will go along with that. But if you're talking about a single motor scooter versus simply a dual motor scooter, you are going to drop in range. Now, the new eMove Cruiser V2 dual motor version actually has a 60 volt battery instead of a 52 volt battery. So you're not necessarily going to lose range on that scooter versus the single motor version because you're going up in battery size. So you might still get the same amount of range. You might get a little bit more range. But adding that second motor to that 52 volt eMove Cruiser V2 is almost certainly going to decrease your range. You're going to get more acceleration. You're going to get better hill climbing, those types of things from having the dual motors. But you're gonna lose range. That's my opinion. It's not even really it's an opinion. I'll just it's what I believe will happen. I could be wrong. I'm not perfect, and I've been wrong a million times. I never say that I won't that I won't be wrong, but that's what I believe. Based on everything, and I haven't seen any of these updates yet where people have done this, upgraded the old 52 volt systems. I think they are selling them on Voro Motors, the upgrade kits. But I haven't seen them, like I said. But I do anticipate that range will go down on the 52 volt systems, but not on the ones that had on the ones that are released as the V2 dual motor version with a 60 volt system. Obviously, you're making up for that with the bigger battery. So, which I think is smart. I don't necessarily think they should even do an upgrade version, but I mean, and if they did, I think it should be less expensive than it is. They should have just released two versions early on. They should have had a 52 volt and 62 volt at the same time, and then you take your choice on which one you want. In this case, now you got a lot of people with 52 volts, and they missed out on the 60 volts, and they got to try to upgrade, but they get the same battery and all that. All right. on with that. That's my take on it from everything that I've learned and viewed, and so just kind of putting that out there. Not just that's my that's my perspective. All right. What else? The tire pressure monitor. So I think I've had put this on the Apollo Go, and just speaking of tire pressure in general, seems like I lose a bit of tire pressure in the Apollo Go compared to the Klima, and maybe it makes sense. I mean, they're smaller tires. It's more in line with the Journey Max. The Journey Max would lose tire pressure fairly frequently. I was always having to add air to it, which I explained, which is how my slime ended up clogging some of my valve stem cores. And so uh, I like having the tire pressure monitor on the Apollo Go. It doesn't the sensors don't fit on the Klima, as far as there's not enough room between the valve stem and the inner workings of uh, the frame right there. So there's a lot crowded in there in the Klima, and it just doesn't work well. Uh, but it turns out I don't really need it on the Klima as much, because I hardly notice a drop. I hardly notice a drop in tire pressure on there. I check them pretty regularly, and they're always pretty good. I've had to do very little getting them aired back up again. On the Apollo Go, uh, just sitting here, it loses tire pressure sometimes. Certainly, when I go out on this last trip, I lost a little bit. I had to add tire pressure this time before I go out again. But I do like having the tire pressure monitor. I think maybe all scooters should start having a tire pressure monitor. There's a couple ways to do them. You can do them with the valve stem covers. Uh, of course, they come with batteries and so forth, so you've got to keep up with that. And then there's another way you can do it inside the tire, some way, and I think that makes more sense for the scooter companies to try to do. I don't know how simple that would be, but I think it's worth trying to figure out, because it's a nice feature to have uh, without having to check your tires constantly. And I like that on the Go. I can see that. But I increased to 50 psi on the Go. I'm right at 50 psi on the Klima. All of my scooters I keep around 50 psi. If they get close to 45 is when I add air. And so between 45 and 50 is where I like to be. I'm right at 45 on the Apollo Go on both. I think it's like 45, 46 on both tires now. So I'll be go ahead and topping them off before I ride the Go next. I checked the Klima, and I'm right at 49.50. So I haven't lost any tire pressure, probably from just checking it, which is once again why I like the tire pressure monitor, because um, even checking the pressure, you lose a tad bit of air every time you check it. And on these small tires, that goes pretty quickly. So which it can be frustrating sometimes. I got these little extenders. They're metal, and they do a fabulous job of not allowing too much air to escape. I had a really tough time with the Journey Max in the beginning, trying to keep air in the tire from just releasing it, even the quick release. And I was trying to hurry up and unscrew the from the valve, or what, the connector. And I'm trying to hurry up, and every time I would check it again, I would lose, a few pounds of pressure in that short period of time. So I was having to try to over inflate it to get it. It was just a real pain. And I ended up only getting it and good enough to where I could take it up uh, to the gas station, where I could use a regular pump and not have to worry about that. So that was the way I handled it up until I got these little metal valve stem extenders, and then that's been a non-issue. But since then, I actually have gotten a inflatable tire pump, a tire inflator, electric automatic tire inflator. So portable tire inflator, and and the way that it connects is really simple. You lose very little air, and and it's pretty easy to do. Although I don't think I've used it on my Journey Max because I haven't because I got it afterward. But I was able to accomplish that with that little tire extender. I'll put a link in the description to that tire extender as well on Amazon that I got, and and if you guys need if you guys want one of those, I found them really handy, especially if you once again if you're trying to if you're losing air or whatever. They hardly have they don't have any. I mean, I thought because of the way it was designed, I could get it off faster than I could the flexible. That's what I did have, was one of these flexible extenders, and I lost so much tire pressure trying to get that thing on and off. So these little metal ones work fabulously. I don't lose any. I mean, you lose a little bit when you're attaching whatever you're attaching to that extender, but when you remove that extender, that little bit of air that you lose is it. And so what I was doing before was I was having to use my tire pump, and then I was having to use that flexible extender, and so I was losing air twice. Once when I'm trying to get on, I could try to do it from the tire, but anyway I did it, I was losing air. So more than I wanted. So this little metal tire extender has got like a little ball on the end that sits in there that you have to push down to be able to remove or add air. And so it's like a floating ball. And so adding air to that tire and with this little metal piece, I don't have the second loss of air. I don't lose any air. Lose a little bit when I removed it from the pump from the extender, but when I remove the extender from the tire itself, from the unloosen, I don't hear the slightest loss of pressure coming out, which is interesting. I don't know how they accomplished that, but that's true. Once again, I'll put it down in a link in the comments. I do get that is an affiliate link, so I do get a small kickback if you decide to get one. Obviously, they're pretty cheap, so I don't know if it really matters much, but I will put that link in the description if you guys are interested. And then so I think anyway, I really like having the tire pressure monitor. I would even like it for the Klima, just so I don't have to worry about it. Not only for these little trips where I go back and forth and lose a little bit of tire pressure, but also if I have a flat or lose a lot of pressure all of a sudden and I don't really realize it right away. It could help avoid an accident if I try to go and lose traction because my wheel is completely flat and I didn't know it. And that's the one thing I have used the single motor versus the dual motor for. So on the Journey Max, I've had a couple flats, one on each, and both times I just decided to ride the scooter home. It was both on the rear tire. Didn't have a way to fix it on the side of the road. I could have called my wife to come get me and put it in the back of the car and everything, but I just decided, I'm not that far. I was a mile or less from home, and I just decided I'm going to go ahead and chance it and take the scooter home, ride it home. Now, on the first time, I didn't think about it. I was most of the way home before I realized that I can turn the rear motor off, so I'm only pulling with the front motor. And that way I'm not pulling from the motor that has the tire flat. So less chance of traction loss, because I'm pulling only with the front motor. I didn't realize that till I was most of the way home, then I turned it on. But when I got the second flat on the other scooter, I thought about it immediately. I was like, I'll go ahead and turn off the rear motor and only use the front motor. That worked fine up until I got to a hill and I had to kind of re-engage the rear motor to get up the hill, and I turned it back off again. But once again, that was only like in an emergency situation, and it was only because, once again, I had the flat and I didn't want to necessarily pull from both motors if I didn't have to. On the go, I can't seem to find a way to turn that off or on. On the Klima, I can. on the Journey Max I can, which I did. But on the go, I don't see a way to do that. So it's not the end of the world. You can get by either way. Like I said, it didn't really cause any issues, but I did find it handy. I'm not advocating riding home on a flat. If I had a flat on the Klima, I don't know. Don't know how I would. It all depends. It all depends on where I was at and everything. That would be kind of tough. I hadn't tried to fit that in my car either. So, that would be crazy. Anyway, guys, if you enjoyed this content, you found it helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. Consider joining me on Patreon, picking up some merch, or buy me a coffee. Thanks, and happy riding.